with that said, thank you, Laura LeMoon, for being here, and we are all looking forward to hearing about your talk about What the Earth Knows, your collection of photography focus on the Green River uh, victims and the spaces related to those humans.
Thank you so much, Daria, and I'm so glad we connected. It's true what you said, that a lot of people have a lot of various reactions to the work. A lot of people have said it's morbid, and it is, but it's morbid with a purpose. Let's see what else. Oh, I'm Laura LeMoon. I want to introduce myself.
Hi, Laura.
Hi. And I've been a sex worker for maybe like 20 years. I'm also a sex trafficking survivor, and that informs a lot of my work as I'm also a writer. So that informs a lot of my work as a writer and a journalist, and then also as an artist, obviously. So I've had a lot of violent experiences in the sex industry, but it's not quite what people would think. So it's not necessarily about violence from individual Johns or tricks. It's more the violence that exists systemically. That's the issue, and more kind of what I'm trying to illuminate with my art. So that's a little about me. I did prepare and write some things, just because I'm not an orator. I am a writer by trade. And so, yeah. And so I feel a little bit more comfortable just writing my thoughts down and getting them down on paper beforehand. So I thought what we would do is I would read some of what I have prepared today, which is a little bit about the background of the Green River Killer, and then also what led me to be interested in like starting the project, I guess. So I'll read that, and then I also have, so I have a book. It's by Anne Rule. I don't know if any of you are familiar with her. She's I think in the 80s and 90s, she was a criminal writer. So she wrote about Ted Bundy. She used to work the domestic violence hotline with Ted Bundy. And she wrote a book called The Stranger Beside Me. And then she wrote another book before she died about the Green River Killer and about the victims. So sex workers don't have a lot to look to that honors us. But I think in this book, it's pretty meaningful to me that she writes about the victims. So I'm going to read a couple pages from that book, just about the victims. And then there's a quote that Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, is sort of most noted for. And I'm paraphrasing, but it's something like, "I knew I could kill them because nobody cares about prostitutes." So his whole thing was, I could kill as many as I want because nobody would stop me, nobody would care, which in a way is true, and in a way he was right, unfortunately. And so I'm going to read a little bit from the Anne Rule book about that statement that he made. And then you might notice around the corner, I have it's sort of like an altar.
Can I wheel that over here?
Yeah, are you able to? Yeah, does it wheel? Okay. So I made a collage of the Green River Killer victims and where they were last seen and where their bodies were found. So that's all 49 victims on this, what are they called? Not canvas.
Oh, yeah.
Easel.
Easel.
Yeah,
good.
On the easel. Yes. Thank you so much, Daria.
Of course.
So, perfect, yay. So this I created of all the victims, and then here, for example, Terry Renee Milligan was 16 years of age. She was last seen on August 29th, 1982, near South 144th Street and Pack Highway South, that's in Seattle. And her body was found on April 1st, 1984, near Star Lake Road, that's in Kent, in Washington. So the majority of the victims were, actually all of the victims were found in Washington, but some of the victims were from Portland, and some of the victims' bodies were driven down to, and I always mess this name up, Tigard. Okay. Yeah, some of the victims' bodies were left in Tigard.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there is the Portland connection a little bit. There's this here, just kind of as people want to interact with it. And then around the corner, I have pieces of paper and these really pretty gold pens. Oh, I'm sorry, here. It magically appeared. So there's pens and paper. What I was thinking is if folks feel moved to write a message to one of the victims or any victim or the victims as a whole, you can write it down on this piece of paper, fold it up, put it in the basket, and then what I'm gonna do is ceremonially burn all the messages and scatter the ashes in the woods near my house. Just kind of giving the messages up with the smoke sort of in the air. Yeah. So feel free to do that and look at the board as you want to. There's also wine here, and I think those are all the things that I wanted to say. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read this piece that I wrote. I knew I could kill them because nobody cares about prostitutes. Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer, said this to former Detective Dave Reichert of the King County Sheriff's Department in Seattle upon his arrest in 2003. He murdered minor sex trafficking victims and adult sex workers for almost 2 decades, from 1982 to 1999, without interference from law enforcement. In December 2021, 3 years after my first piece in the Huffington Post, because I'm a journalist, I wrote another piece for them that would change the course of my entire life forever. The piece was about Washington State's infamous Green River Killer and documented my journey to all the locations in which the victims, largely sex workers and underage trafficking victims, were murdered or their bodies last found. I took photos at a few of the locations, and they were used in the Huffington Post piece. So that Huffington Post piece was published in 2021, and it was kind of the beginning of like this whole project coming together really in like a physical way. So it was published on December 17th, 2021, which is the International Day to End Violence Against People in the Sex Trade. And I decided the article needed to be accompanied by a visual piece of photographs for all 49 locations. So for the piece, I was visiting all 49 locations just to kind of like spiritually interact with the places where the bodies were left. And then I think I go into this a little bit later, but I sort of found like randomly this pink daisy on the side of the road, and it was just by itself growing out of the road in like November or something in Seattle, which isn't very common. And I took a picture of it, and then it was kind of like, I wonder if I do this for all of the sites and kind of document all of them. So that's how the project kind of came to fruition. Okay, it is generally accepted that Gary Ridgway began murdering girls and women in the sex trade in 1982, though some experts believe he began even earlier. Ridgway's first victim was 16-year-old Wendy Caulfield in July of 1982, where her body was found in the Green River in Kent, roughly 20 miles south of Seattle. Between 1982 and 1999, Ridgway will murder 49 girls and women, almost all of them in this sex trade. Actually, by my research, it's all but one. One woman was sort of in the wrong place at the wrong time, but the rest of them were pretty much sought after intentionally. So I took photos of landscapes and cityscapes for 2 years throughout 2022 and 2023. And I did it in cities like around Seattle, like Enumclaw, Tacoma, Kent, Des Moines, Maple Valley, and of course Seattle itself. And then also Tigard, right? Tigard. Tigard. I'm gonna get it right one day. Okay. All right. And this is more of what I wrote. Imagine you're a child living in a family that does not show you the love you deserve, that does not meet your most basic needs. You figure it is better to leave for the streets to make it on your own than to stay where none of your needs are met. You stay on the track, which the track is the term for where outdoor sex work occurs, for a month, 6 months, 6 years. And eventually you pick up a trick in a maroon pickup truck. He has sex with you or rapes you, then murders you by bashing your skull in with a rock while you try to run away naked, or he strangles you. You die where you tried to live, on the track or on an abandoned side road away from it. And the man in the maroon truck comes back to where he dumped your cold body to insert rocks into its vagina. So that's one thing that Gary Ridgway did. In addition to necrophilia, he also came back to insert rocks into the vagina, so to further disrespect the women. The youngest girl's bones were found in 2020, and she was estimated to have been 14 years old when Ridgway picked her up on the track and murdered her, dumping her body in a shallow grave in the woods. The girls and women murdered are more than just murdered girls and women. They are more than prostitutes. To exist as a girl or woman in the sex trade is to walk as a ghost in a world that both denies your existence and fears it. No allegory can be made, no metaphor or simile. Many of these are minor girls who left home early, escaping rape, abuse, and neglect, and surviving on the streets and trying to make a better life for themselves with no family and no support and no legal rights as minors. This morning, my mom asked me why I got started with this project. I told her that talking to dead people allows me to say things I don't feel comfortable saying to anyone alive. That even though I'm a sex workers' rights activist, I still feel shame. It's not my shame, it's theirs. But when I'm being rejected by friends or dates or jobs or potential roommates or just non-sex workers in general, in the private moments of my life, I feel the shame that is theirs that they project onto me. I can talk to the dead about my feelings of survivor guilt, and they understand. My ancestors, our sex work ancestors, understand. I suppose the biggest thing I get from our sex worker ancestors, these girls and women whose lives were taken so abruptly, is a lack of judgment. The dead don't judge like the living. They don't think I'm any less an activist because I feel shame, or any less deserving of compassion because I didn't die all those times I could have. What I get from this project is siblinghood, connection with my community, maybe in a way I can't connect with live people. This project started accidentally, or maybe fortuitously, in 2021. I wrote a piece for the Huffington Post about the Green River Killer. But in that project, I stood outside the site of one of the victims' deaths on International Boulevard in Seattle. I saw a pink daisy in a weird spot, as I was saying, in a weird time of year. I mean, pink daisies don't just grow randomly out of the dirt in the side of the road. At that moment, I took my first picture, and it's actually, as I'm thinking about it, that's kind of weird that it's not in the series. Yeah, it should be. I still have the picture, I think. It was in the Huffington Post piece, though, the pink daisy picture. So there is magic in blank space. My best moments of creative productiveness are when I'm walking in nature or driving on the freeway. when I'm not being drawn into the abyss of my phone or distracted by music or podcasts. We need to make room for creativity, and this means not always having an agenda, an end point, or a map. So that's like, I don't know how you sort of connect with the muse, how you all sort of connect with the muse, but for me, like what I do is I like to take long drives and just not listen to anything. Or I walk in nature, and that really helps me, but like having the quiet is very unsettling, and you're like, I need to put on a podcast, I need to like watch Hulu on my phone, I need to do something. But sort of not giving into that has been really fruitful for me as an artist. The other question I get asked a lot is, how did you come to this project? So while I didn't really set out to do this from step one, as I was saying, my lifelong passion has always been about combating violence. And I apologize, I should have like I meant to give a trigger warning at the beginning, so I apologize. I don't want to trigger anyone, but there is going to be mention of violence and stuff like that. So if you need to step out or anything, that's totally fine. Okay. So when I was raped by a trick in late 2019, it wasn't necessarily even the rape itself that was the worst part. It was the societal violence that followed. I didn't feel safe going to the hospital because I knew what I was going to hear if I told the truth. Wait, what do you mean you got raped as a sex worker? And if I had to lie, then what was the point in trying to get help anyways? I couldn't have gone to the cops if I wanted to, which I didn't. I had no money to buy Plan B, so I just spent months worried I was pregnant with some disgusting rapist baby. I couldn't even afford a pregnancy test. Because I couldn't go to the hospital, I couldn't take PEP, which is a medication you take for 28 days following possible HIV exposure, so I didn't know if I had contracted HIV or any other STIs. I had no bodily power or autonomy, all because I was a criminalized individual, a sex worker. While I didn't consciously decide to do this project, it definitely subconsciously came from a lifetime of experiences like this, which taught me to believe in the purpose of my own path, even when I can't see the path ahead of me. So for a while I was kind of in 2019 after the rape, in 2020, and even into 2021, I feel like I was like, the idea was germinating, like it was there and it was incubating. I didn't really know what it was yet or where I was going with it. But kind of what I learned for myself is you just need to trust like your own path as an artist, and even if you can't see the path ahead of you, like the path will appear, as they say. So often people ask me if I'm some kind of true crime fiend who has an obsession with all things serial killer. I actually never watched those shows or listened to those podcasts. Once a friend asked me, so what did you learn as a result of this project? Nothing, I responded. If you mean what did learning about grisly murder of sex workers teach me, it didn't teach me anything because I already knew. I've been in these girls' situations, the all too random difference only being I survived. I've known plenty of sociopaths like Gary Ridgway, looked into their eyes and on occasion had sex with them, sometimes for money, sometimes for free. What I was taught was by the victims. I learned to have a relationship with the dead and how to better connect to my intuition and my sacred divine as a sex worker. As weird as it sounds, I gained community. In the heat of 2023, when Taylor Swift was singing about a cruel summer, I began work at a cemetery and funeral home in Tacoma, Washington, the city where Ted Bundy was born and raised, the city I had been living in for 5 years, and a city a mere 10 miles away from where Gary Ridgway grew up. While Seattle is famous for flying fish, grunge, and Microsoft, I moved to Tacoma in 2018 after being homeless and ended up there because it was the first apartment that did not do any kind of credit or criminal check. I began work in the tombstone department, ordering and keeping track of tombstones, also called markers. One day, a particular name came across my desk. The last name of Bonner. Immediately in my mind, I thought it an odd coincidence, seeing how it wasn't a very common last name. I was tasked with measuring the area for the headstone for a Bonner family member. While out in a blazing July heat trying to figure out how to measure empty space, I looked to my left and saw Deborah Lynn Bonner with her exact birth year and death year, 1958 to 1982. I double checked on a grave finder site we frequently use at work, and it was indeed that Deborah Bonner, who was the third victim of the Green River killer. And here, Deborah Lynn Bonner. She was 23 years old. At the cemetery, I took frequent walks through the grounds, and I heard voices in my head that appeared to me like water. Unbeknownst to me, I had been working at the same cemetery where one of the first victims of the Green River killer was buried. Maybe it's me changing the energy, but I believe Deborah brought me to her. She was 23 and working on the track when Gary Ridgway picked her up and murdered her. There is something so sacredly unspoken between sex workers. I think maybe one of the reasons I felt so connected to her after I found out it was her was that she could be dead and still know, for a fact, especially given the circumstances of her death. She knew what it was like to be a sex worker. I never had to tell her about the rapes. I never had to, create an argument so she would believe me. She, of all people, knew. She took my shame away, and maybe more than anything, why I felt so connected to her was because I could have easily been her. There are things other people will always ostracize me for, and those that don't show me outright hatred, show me cold ambivalence. That's kind of the best someone like me can hope for, innocuous, well-meaning ignorance. I get fired, men won't date me, people send death threats to my mother's house, to my house, people won't rent to me, don't want to be friends with me, are afraid to touch me. I am a walking cancer. The words stick between my teeth like old food. They die there without ever getting out, and she knows that. I still couldn't make the money I needed to survive, even with my job at the funeral home. It was so hard to get a job because of my name. So I think as I mentioned, I'm a public journalist, and Laura LeMoon is my legal name. And Laura LeMoon is the name I write under, and I always write about being a sex worker. So they're all op-eds about my experience as a sex worker. So you can imagine the kind of attention I sometimes get. Every day I came to the funeral home, I was nervous someone would expose me, but so far everyone had been acting normal around me. We spend our lives from the moment we begin doing sex work as highly stigmatized and completely criminalized. At every turn, we have to hide our very beings from mainstream society. Or if we do come to the mainstream in hope of changing our circumstances, someone with gatekeeping power is trying to keep us invisible and unheard so that we can rightfully remain where we are. I went to see Deborah yesterday. I put another Happy Meal on her grave. I'm just gonna take one. I laughed as I took a fry from her meal before closing the happy box back up. I reached into my pocket and pulled out other things for her. Things that I had that served their purpose with me and were asking to move on. A shard of black tourmaline, the piece I had in my bra for protection last time I turned a trick. 3 golden coins from my trip to Japan. Circles with holes in the middle, little unknowns. A red-tailed hawk feather I found on a path where the path disappeared before me. I walked back to my car. I pulled up a green bottle of off-brand cleanser from the Dollar Tree. I grabbed the paper towels from the floor of the passenger seat. I walked past 4 brass markers until I see Deborah's. I spray the paper towel gingerly with cleaner and I rub. I brush away the bits of grass that cover her name from the undertaker's leisurely summer mowing. I rip out the weeds that grow over her name. I have come here many times already, and never have I seen any trinkets from anyone else. A forgotten name. After I'm done, I put my hand on the clean marker. In the middle reads Deborah Lynn Bonner, 1958 to 1982. A raven caws in a nearby tree, and it is time for me to go. I rested my hand on her name. I lifted my hand to my mouth and kissed it and placed it back on her name. I love you. I'll be back. I turned my head back up. The raven was still there. I stood up and turned to walk away. I walked towards a creamsicle sun bowing beneath the trees as a crossroads appeared. I was still in earshot when I heard a raven's loud caw. So that's that.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
That's so
it's
powerful.
heavy stuff if we need to take a minute. I just wanted to read, how are we doing on time?
You can take all the time.
We're good.
Okay, I mean, it's just us, so that's nice.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, so I'm gonna read, it kind of the book goes through like this, so it's like Linda Jane Rule, Denise Bush. So I'm just gonna read a couple of these to you just to kind of give you an idea of the lives of the victims, or rather the deaths. Okay, so it's kind of interesting because Linda's family had contacted me after I wrote the Huffington Post piece. And they were very grateful to me for the piece, which was really nice feedback to get. So, let's see, where is Linda? No, it's not a very good picture. Is that, no, that's Giselle. Here we go. Oh my gosh, right in the middle. Linda Jane Rule, she was 16. So Linda Jane was 16 years old when her family virtually disintegrated. Her father, Robert, and her mother, also named Linda, divorced, and Linda turned to life on the streets. Her younger sister, Colleen, who idolized Linda, stayed with their mother. The girls looked nothing alike. Colleen was tall and hearty looking with pink cheeks, like their father. Linda was a petite, fragile girl who resembled their mother, except that she was a little taller and she bleached her hair a very light blonde. Sometime between 2 and 4 in the afternoon on Sunday, September 26th, Linda left the room she shared with her boyfriend at a small brick Aurora Avenue motel. I don't know how familiar you all are with Seattle, but Aurora Avenue is a very common street where outdoor sex work takes place in Seattle. She wore pinstriped blue jeans and a black nylon jacket. She walked north, headed for the Kmart, where she planned to shop for clothes. Linda's street name was Ziggy, after the cigarette papers used to make joints. It never seemed to fit her. She was softer and more feminine than that, and you can see she kind of looked very, very young, even for her 16 years of age. Linda's boyfriend wasn't particularly upset when she didn't come home that night. I assumed she'd been arrested, he told Seattle Police Detective Bob Holter. It was daytime and she wouldn't have been working on Aurora in the afternoon. Linda had a lamentably familiar background. She dropped out of junior high and she was a moderate drug user, marijuana and Ritalin, but she was happy the day she left the motel. She and her boyfriend, Bobby, 24, were planning to get married, and she hoped they could have a regular, normal life. Bobby looked for Linda in all the places he figured she might be. She wasn't in jail, she hadn't been arrested for prostitution or for anything else, and none of her friends had seen her. He kept careful notes on his search for her and made a missing persons report. And she was 16 years of age, last seen at the Seals Motel was kind of like a super sketch motel on Aurora. It now is under a new owner, and I think it's called like the Seattle Hotel or something. Her body was found on the campus of Northwest Hospital, which is a UW, University of Washington hospital, on January 31st, 1983. All right, and then Denise Darcel Bush. I don't know how good eyesight you all have. I don't have good eyesight, so I probably couldn't see that. Denise Darcel Bush, 23, was from Portland originally, and she sometimes traveled to Seattle to work for a few weeks. Portland is 180 miles south of Seattle, less than a 3-hour drive. Young prostitutes were a little frightened in Oregon, but they figured that the killer was striking only in Seattle. In Portland, the street girls called their work area the camp. They worked downtown between 3rd and 4th to the east and west, and Taylor and Yamhill to the north and south. Now that vagrants had taken over much of Burnside Street, most of the women rented motel apartments by the week up on Broadway. All they had to their names, a one-time prostitute recalled, was a pack of cigarettes, the motel key, and some change. Their pimps would wait for them down by the Lotus Bar, and they got the real money. They had Adidas outfits and real leather coats. A lot of the girls wanted to go to Seattle because they heard the money was better up there. I was older, so I usually worked the hotel lounges. When a girl was gone for a while, I didn't pay attention because I figured they'd gone to Seattle or Alaska. Funny how we assumed they just went on with their lives when in reality they were missing or dead. Denise Darcel Bush had gone to Seattle in the fall of 1982. She had a boyfriend, and they put it in quotations, but she was alone the last time anyone saw her on October 8th. She was crossing the road on Pacific Highway South and South 144th, which is also a track, a place where outdoor sex work happens. Like so many of the girls who were disappearing, Denise left in the middle of life. She was going on a short errand to a convenience store to buy cigarettes. In the past, Denise had suffered bouts of epileptic seizures, but they were controlled with medication. At some point, she'd had a medical procedure involving her brain and her skull had a small hole in the bony process there. But she rarely thought about it.
Oh, sorry.
What's wrong, Queenie?
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Sorry, Queenie.
Can you go back 1 second?
Only people close to her knew about it. Denise was seen on one side of the highway, but she never made it across. Or if she did, no one who knew her ever saw her after that. Sorry, hopefully you could understand what I was saying.
Yeah.
So many women were disappearing, yet it was impossible to verify that they were gone against their will. So I'll just leave that for that, and then I'll just read you the paragraph that has Ridgway's quotation about nobody caring about prostitutes. As the charges were read, it was apparent that there were some unexpected and heretofore known victims who came after the young women who had become familiar to those who followed the Green River cases. In the months of interrogation, Ridgway's questioners had discovered that the murders had not stopped in 1984 or even 1985. He continued to patronize prostitutes and sit in dark spots along the strip, watching the girls seeking prey. Sorry. Okay, I must have lost my place.
Don't worry.
Well, he was an asshole. And he
Exactly.
Said fucked up
That sums
shit
it up.
about sex workers.
And horrible,
Yeah.
horrible
He was
hustle.
a
Sick.
douchebag.
Sick.
Yeah. So, that's kind of all I have planned. Let's see, feel free to take a look at this a little more closely. I know it's like not easy to take in. I know none of this, like what I've said so far, is easy to take in. And I just appreciate you all being here, and I appreciate anyone who is willing to hold space for this kind of stuff, because sex workers really need it. We don't have a lot of real hardcore allies and people who are willing to go to bat for us. So it means a lot just being able to take in the morbidity and process it and let it flow, rather than sort of being put off by it immediately, which I know is like probably most people's immediate reaction, but we need to get past the immediate reactions, and go deeper. And that's how people can support sex workers and support sex worker artists. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
I always have a question.
Do you have a question?
I always do. So, in all of your research, do you know anything about his life? Like, I mean, I'm just thinking how sick he was.
Yeah.
And not that I want to drum up any sympathy for him, but I'm just curious how a person becomes that sick.
Yeah, no, I think that's normal to try to like make sense of it, because it doesn't make sense. But he, by all accounts, had a very normal childhood. He had what would be described as like weird sexual boundaries with his mom. Like when he was 10 years old, his mom would like shower with him.
Oh.
So there were like weird sexual boundaries with his mother, but there's no like known abuse or anything that could make you be like, oh, okay, maybe I can see how this led to that. Yeah.
Sometimes when you see, I can't think of one right now, but sometimes you see movies or read books about people who have done hideous crimes, and you get a sense of why they may have ended up that way. And I don't think it's about trying to encourage people to be sympathetic for them, because I don't think there's room for that. But it helps a little bit to know, I think, how they came to those behaviors.
Right. That it's not just like totally random.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why true crime has such a fan following that it does, is because people, at least in part, are trying to make sense of what doesn't make any sense to like normal non-serial murderer people. So, and I think part of us is also trying to be like, well, could I ever do that? Is that something that like I'm capable of? Or is this just like what is the difference between a me and a Gary Ridgway? Or, is it like a biochemical difference? Is it just behavioral? Is it choice? Does he not have a choice? I think there's like so many big questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have an answer.
Well, I was just curious, if you... Because it had to cross your mind at some point, I figured,
A lot.
Yeah.
I think about it a lot, and I don't even know if I have like a guess, really. I mean, I think it probably is a combination of like nature and nurture or biochemical stuff.
Who knows?
Yeah.
That many, that many women. That's what makes it like, wow, what happened to him, Or was he just born off? that's what made me think about it. I mean, sometimes if you, I don't know anything about true crime, to tell you the truth, but sometimes when you hear or read about, I don't know, a woman murdered her husband, and you hear the story, you're like, yeah, I would have too.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But this,
Right.
No,
this is just purely maniacal. This is just like preying on people solely because I wish I could find that quote. I know I'm gonna find it like as soon as I walk out of here, and it's gonna piss me off. But he was literally hunting people.
Yeah. Wow.
And he's still alive, right? Sorry.
Oh yeah, he's
in
he's
prison.
still alive. He's in his like mid-70s, I think. But he has dementia. And yeah, he's in Walla Walla Max facility.
Do you feel that doing this project and finding that siblinghood was a balm for your own shame in any way?
Yeah, I feel like absolutely it was. I feel like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place as sex workers' rights activists, because if we admit to anything like shame or any bad negative feelings associated with sex work, we feel like that will be used against us. So it's kind of like we can't really we can't really be honest about it, or at least that's the way I feel, is like there's no room in a lot of these discussions for complexity. Like people just don't want to take like complex arguments. They want it to be a dichotomy. They want it to be a binary. They want it to be sex workers versus sex trafficking victims. Or they want to just like deny that sex work even exists, that nobody can choose to be in sex work, that it's all sex trafficking. So it's kind of hard, and especially with a lot of those arguments and conversations, we're not being brought to the table. So we're not being allowed to participate in those conversations. So I think I do, carry a lot of shame, and a lot of it is because I live out loud. I live as a totally out sex worker under my legal name. So like that opens the door for everything and everyone. And so, yeah, it's hard not to feel like when people tell me to go kill myself, or like I'm a whore, or all this type of stuff, it's hard not to internalize that for me. So yeah, that's a good question.
Is there empowerment in that unity and not having a different name? Speaking as somebody with 5 different names that I've used.
Yeah. I think there is. You mean empowerment in sex work, or in having a different name?
In choosing to be completely out and unified in your identity in all of your different realms, as a writer, as an artist, as somebody working, in other professions, and working as a sex worker.
Yeah, I think
you could have chosen a different path and divided it.
Right. To me, I understand why other people choose to have, multiple names, or choose to have a name as a sex worker, which is different than, I had a name, don't get me wrong, I had a name as a sex worker that was different than my real name. That was the only fake name I would use. But like as a journalist, I don't want to be anybody other than Laura LeMoon. Like I can't explain it really to other people, a lot of times to other sex workers, that like I don't want to make up a name. I don't want to be somebody else. Like that's not my path. So, and I can only speak to that for myself.
So, after this talk, I feel even more grateful, I think is the word, for you being here. I think you are an incredibly courageous
That's the word.
human
Oh,
being. I
thank
am
you.
so amazed by you.
Oh, thank you.
So amazed by you. And I'm so sorry
Yeah.
that people treated you like crap. The way you describe it is
Heartbreaking.
just not good. You know, I can't believe that we are in a world where there are people that will do that. I think is, I don't even have the word for describing what I feel about it, but I'm really sorry that you had to, or maybe still have to,
Yeah.
endure those behaviors. I think it's just despicable.
Yeah.
Despicable. And despite of that, though, you keep moving on and going on, and that is so admirable.
Thank you.
You know, so admirable. And you know, and that I think is reflected also in just this moment of you deciding to keep your name, right? That actually also is a very specific decision
Yeah.
that you took, and that is a very courageous decision too, right? And there's a lot of integrity in that, and so I'm really extra grateful for the opportunity to have your show here, and I have to tell you that I've been looking at people engaging with it, and I think it is very important that this keeps going around, because people I've had so many conversations about this in the last couple of weeks.
I bet.
and it really is something that I'm also very much I was very perplexed, I guess maybe is the word, but also not surprised simultaneously about what you were talking about, description of people not wanting to engage with you as a human being, basically.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, and it kind of reminded me of when I was a student in Milan. So in Milan, they used to be legal brothels where there was regulation, and then they closed them at some point in the 70s, and as a result of that there's like the track, you call it?
Yeah.
A lot of tracks. Milan is unbelievably...
Really? I was just there a year ago.
God, it's unbelievable.
I had no idea.
And so I used to live the last 4 years of university, because it was cheaper. We used to live in an apartment on this specific boulevard, city center, but it was a renowned place. There were a lot of little motels and
Okay.
And we had in our apartment building, we had, for the entire time that I was there was a rotation of sex workers in front of our door, actually.
Yeah.
And I knew them all. And they were my age.
Yeah.
I was going to university. And they were there in the cold. It was freaking cold sometimes,
Yeah.
And I would bring them coffee and, breakfast in the morning. And I remember that when I mentioned that, friends and family, they had that reaction of like, oh God, that kind of reaction. I was like, what's going on? Like, why would you have this reaction? I remember that reaction reminded me what you were describing me, and I'm like, these are people that my age. They're my it's my age. I'm like lucky that I get to go to university, and whatever is their story, right? They're here in the cold. I'm pretty sure that they are not enjoying this moment of being in the cold, and like they're human beings like me. Like there is a difference. We're the same age, right? We're peers.
Right.
But I remember the reaction, and that reaction was really weird.
Yeah.
It was like there was a level of dehumanization,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, dude, no.
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, are you kidding me? And I remember that we had the best. I mean, I knew them all. We shifted a few. I think that some of them, I want to believe that they made enough money to move away and go somewhere else. But it is pretty intense over there. I mean, it's like, there's a lot of spaces that they are absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, where we were was actually not bad, but there are some areas in Milan that are like sketch, you know,
okay.
and I have no doubts that there are maybe not to this, hopefully not to this level, but I have no doubts whatsoever that the quote that you were looking for applies also there, because I think that I have no doubt that there are some of these young women disappearing and nobody knows.
Oh, of course, yep.
And I don't think they put any work to find out what happened to them.
No.
And it's kind of really gross that we live in a society where that happens, I think. And so I'm really, this is a big long rambling here, but I'm really sorry that I guess we are in a society where these things, where people dehumanize others to these levels. It's just, it's really scary that that exists as a phenomena in our society, I think. Because I mean, this guy was sick, you know. I don't even, honestly, I don't care. I'm like, I don't care about him. Like, he's a sick ass. But I mean, the fact that we are in it, I think that the surrounding society to me is more puzzling. You know what I mean? Like, because this guy is a sick bastard. I mean, he's crazy in the head. But the society around it, you know, that enables or closes an eyes or pretends it doesn't exist.
It's all a trajectory of like whorephobia and anti-sex worker sentiment, you know. It's like, and that's kind of what I try to get at with this is like, Gary Ridgway is maybe, you know, an extreme example, but it's not totally like separate from like what you're describing or what I experience when people tell me, you know, I'm a whore or like whatever. You know, it's all just on a trajectory, on a spectrum. Yeah,
you're right.
Which I think it's really interesting how like you've located your project on the track, you know, in one realm within sex work, and then people have different levels of stigma and different narratives attached to different other forms of sex work. But the fact is, this is like the most stereotyped, most reviled within that realm. But I think you're right in terms of like just, you know, women and desire in general. It's like all like one continuum. You have like an apparent sexuality that's, you know, very, very provocative for the culture in general. And this is a way to talk about like kind of what it's at the very core of all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like an extreme example of all those things.
Yes.
Do you have designs on a new project related to this or otherwise?
I don't. I'm like so annoyed with myself that I don't have any inspiration or visions yet for another project.
No shame in that.
No, I know. I'm just like, you know, I the way I get ideas is just kind of they sort of come to me. But through like tuning in, I have to like deliberately tune into the mothership. The art mothership.
But I mean, I think to me, like this that is on the easel, it seems to me that is possibly so what am I trying to say? I think that in the photography is the space between these women and that awful person and what happened, in the space between those two, right? He's not, I mean, he's and the acts are in there because we know about the death. But, you know, like this is more focusing on them. And there is an action of humanization. Right? And so it's different. To me, the narrative is slightly different.
You're right.
And I wonder if this could be the beginning of a new thing, which is really more about, not necessarily about this individual per se, but maybe living individuals that are in the sex trade and really
that'd be cool.
Humanizing, you know what I mean? Creating a way for people to understand, you know, this is actually your age, or, you know, like people like you, you know, like, and there is something about that, because there is to some degree this like lack of knowledge, but also like put it under the rug kind of societal, it exists, but you pretend it's not there kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? I mean, this is like, I think that this to me is that kind of sense of creating the connection. You created a connection with these women, obviously.
Yeah.
Perhaps the next step is enabling for others to feel connected, not only with those that unfortunately lost their lives, but also with the ones that are still around,
Still alive, yeah.
right?
I like that.
And understanding their stories and their back, like, what is like, how does it feel when people tell you, so I mean, to me that would be important way of creating a human connection and humanization that I think we need in society, not only on this specific theme of sex trade, but like in general. I think we're losing track of what compassion means, but also what humanity, not even compassion, is about. What does it mean to be a fellow human in this planet next to other fellow humans, and realizing that we're all different but also similar in different ways, and how do we uplift each other and respect each other and see each other, right? And so I think there is a bigger societal gap that is growing and growing, especially in this country, I think, and I think the arts should do the opposite, which is really to try to create that is, a lens that enables you to gain back the humanity, gain back the understanding, in your question, Diane, you were saying, like, I don't understand, I want to understand, like, we all want to understand. It's a way for us to process who we are and why we're here and what can we do with that time, and I'm more interested personally to know more about that than I am about the villain, the villain I don't care about, he can rot in hell as far as I'm concerned, but to understand better a trait that I'm not part of, but that is part of my society, and what does it mean for me as part of the same society, right? And how can we better understand each other, and I think that would be an interesting way to look at it personally.
Yeah, I like the focusing on the people who are alive.
Yes.
Too.
Yes. I mean, like,
Yeah, like in the book, I was hoping that author would have more of a narrative for each of them. I mean, I could imagine like since you are such a talented writer, like a fictionalized diary like Anne Frank, like full of them. It's like these women were coming of age, a lot of them when they lost their lives. It would be so fascinating to just have a chance to even imagine what coming of age looked like within this world.
Yeah.
There's a popular book right now. A book club I belong to has been reading it, and wouldn't it be great if I could think of the name of the book?
You would.
Calamity Club. It's called the Calamity Club. And anyways, it's fiction. It's definitely fiction, but it's about during the Great Depression. It's about a wealthy family who found out their son was gay, and then fast forward to they lose everything, and there's a woman who takes on the project of turning this giant, beautiful home into a brothel, and they call it a dance club. Anyways, so but what I have finished the book, and what I found interesting is that each woman who comes there to get a room and make money from sex, kind of has a specialty, and they get into their the author does a great character development of each one of them, so that as you go through the book, you're like, wow, her life, and it really so it's interesting. Most of the women in this group are very, liberal and all that. There's one who texted us all, I don't know, maybe a week and a half ago and said, I am not going to read this book because, because this is the subject matter. And she's really, not to say anything about Christians, but I mean, she won't read anything about gay. She won't read anything about, she's judgmental.
Yeah.
And somehow she
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
Sounds very much so.
yeah, somehow she ended up in this group, when she's not in the discussion, we have great discussions. And I've just said recently, I think we should have the same discussions whether she's there or not.
Yeah,
because
Absolutely.
it's,
Who cares
it's
about it?
possible her mind will open
Yeah.
based on something we're saying, and also if she
Absolutely.
feels that uncomfortable, she can leave.
Right.
Absolutely.
But anyways, I bring this up to just say, oh my gosh, I think this was a book recommended by Oprah or, somebody. It's like, I think there's room for,
Yeah.
whether it's fiction or non-fiction, I think there's room for you to do more writing about it if you're drawn to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, she's a very skilled writer, so I
Yeah.
think that would be an easy one for you. To
I
pull
have
out.
a memoir I'm trying to
Wow,
get
yeah.
somebody to
Are you
publish.
shopping it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
Right?
It's rough.
It's so rough.
Are you a writer too?
No, I'm from a family of artist
Oh,
writers. And
okay.
Yeah, I mean, both my mother and my brother are shopping right now. It's
It's
just brutal.
It's brutal. It's
so
constant
rough.
rejection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Sucks.
totally the name of the game.
Yeah.
You got this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't give up though. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it will be, there's so many, I can see in my head so many different pathways
Mhm.
of, at a minimum even, like what you said earlier, I think it's very true. Like sometimes, you want to go in a direction, but you don't know exactly where it's going to take you, and it's
Yeah.
going to unfold as you go along the
Yeah.
path, right? And so, I can imagine, like, what if, for example, given that you're a journalist, right, if you were starting to interview women there are in the industry, and just see what that is. Maybe one day you'll get up and like, I know what I'm gonna do with this, but I think there is something there, like really the understanding and the taking off the veil and just like, taking off the mystery or
Yeah.
the whatever, the covering up, just like, and put on the humanity and the kind of the connection,
Yeah.
right? I think that would be very valuable.
Yeah. I agree.
You know what's interesting I'm picking up here too is that like both of you all are telling stories where there was a humanization that happened for sex workers, and then you felt an accompanying revulsion about people who didn't agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I think there's something really interesting
Yeah, well,
here
yeah.
because that's kind of where we would want people to be.
Yeah.
We would want people to be like, what do you? Why
What's
are we,
wrong with
why are we-
you?
what's
Yeah,
wrong
like,
with
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
So I wonder about
Yeah, you're
some
right.
sort of combination of first person accounts, which I think there are a ton of those
Yeah.
in terms of like there's just a ton of YouTube first person sitting in a chair interviews
Yeah.
that are
Yes.
super
Amazing.
that can be amazing
Super
or
punchy in the face.
extractive,
Yeah, yeah.
depending, right?
Yeah.
Depending on who's holding the lens. But I wonder about a mixture of that and then also just like interviewing folks who sex work or sex workers or a sex worker has become humanized for them, and then because in a way it's like that's where the encouragement can happen.
Yeah.
Or even interviewing the people like the bigot friend,
Yeah,
person
yeah,
in the group,
Oh,
right?
true that.
Right.
Because that
Both
also
sides,
would
yeah.
be like, whoa, you're watching it and you're like, God, what's wrong with this person?
Right, how do
Maybe
you
the
really
chapters
feel?
go back and
I mean,
forth.
like,
Expose them.
Yeah.
to be kind of in front of like,
Yeah.
it kind of makes you feel like God, and then you realize by feeling the adversity, feeling like disgust for the bigotry of someone, then you realize you want to learn more about that topic as a consequence of become even more of an advocate or an ally as a consequence of like,
Yeah.
back off, that's rude,
Yeah.
that's inappropriate or whatever, but yeah, I can see a lot of
Because it's sort of like
Opportunities.
how you both were describing how you felt about the person in your book club,
Yeah.
and the folks who
they were like shocked
dehumanizing
that I
the
would
person.
talk with the prostitute, be like, They were in front of my home.
That's
I
where the
give them
negativity
coffee.
should be flowing, right? The
Yes.
negativity should be flowing towards the sort of that type of bigotry.
Yeah, yeah.
Insensitivity.
Yes, yes,
They should be the
true.
ones catching it.
Yeah, it's like when did you forget you're a person?
Right.
Well, when was the moment where you suddenly stopped being an actual human being, you know? Oh, hi, hello.
I was going to ask you the same question. Are
Nice to meet you.
what's happening?
See you.
Are you ready to read it again?
Yeah,
Right
No,
now.
you know what? I don't know how you feel about it. I think it was
Let me-
intimacy.
Let me stop the recording.